Mr. Morphew, did you hear and understand those rights?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any questions about them?
No, sir.
And are you affirmatively requesting that I appoint the Public Defender's Office at this point to represent you?
Yes, sir.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, I'm going to give you my take on Barry's appearance in court yesterday. I know it was covered by a couple of other people, but I'm just going to give you a sort of analysis just based on what we observed. There wasn't a lot that we didn't hear everything, we didn't certainly see everything. But what a remarkable turn of events. Almost a year goes by, suddenly news of his arrest, and the next thing you see him shackled in his sort of prison pajamas, and there he is. It's kind of like game over. And he seems to have the body language of someone caught out and sort of all the puff taken out of his sails, right? So for me, it was a shock seeing Barry in court yesterday, dressed in those sort of orange prison pajamas. I think it was probably a bigger shock for him. Barry would have spent the night in a jail cell, perhaps his first night, and suddenly glimpsed what the rest of his life is probably going to look, feel, and smell like. That's how quickly life can change in true crime. 1 minute you're driving down the road, the next it's all over. I've heard and seen a lot of people talking about repeating the same thing. Divorce, ? Why not just get a divorce, right? And that is the question that the court is going to be asking and hopefully answering. For whatever reason, and I think we can kind of speculate what they might be, for whatever reason, people like Chris Watts, Patrick Frazee, and Barry Morphew made some kind of internal calculation and decided divorce wasn't going to work. Either it was going to take too long, or it was going to be too damaging in terms of finances or something like that. And I do think finances probably played a big role, that they basically felt like they couldn't afford it. And this is probably going to be a controversial statement to make, but one wonders whether the divorce laws or the divorce process can't be something that can be improved on and streamlined in Colorado and perhaps other states as well. What I mean is, if murder is more tempting than getting divorced, if getting divorced is actually scary and fraught with all sorts of things, then maybe a response from the legal community could be to try and find ways to make getting divorced more easily. I think we tend to look at these men, and they're definitely not models of society, but we tend to look at these men and just think that they are base creatures and horrible people. But I think the other side of it is, what were they so afraid of doing things the proper way? And I think that may be a way to, if you can solve or if you can prevent one crime from happening, prevention is better than cure, then isn't that a victory? So maybe that is just something to consider. So something else I just want to bring up is, someone else was saying, is it so hard just to stay married for the duration? Why don't they just stay married? I think the question was, get divorced or commit murder, and someone said, well, there's a third option, just stay married. And I think it's sometimes easy to forget, especially if your life is hunky-dory, that people are fluid. Marriages are fluid. People change, marriages change, jobs change, the environment changes, economies change. The world is changing very, very rapidly. And so we've seen, just in the last while, we've seen high-profile splits like Bill and Melinda Gates, and that's something that you wouldn't expect. Older couples just deciding, I don't want to live the rest of my life with you. I want something more, I guess. We've seen something similar with Jeff Bezos, right? So people are fluid. People change, and people's hearts can sometimes people have a change of heart, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault, but what do you do with it? How do you go about it? That is the question. In this case, the killer question. So, in the 9 News coverage, which was quite interesting to look at, I'll put a link in the description. It's clear Barry was using his public defender to shield behind the gaze of the camera. That was another shock for me, that despite having disposed of a $1.5 million home, I think I've seen some news articles saying it's $1.6 million, despite disposing of his home, and this is something that happened, I think, around about March 5th this year. So there was a time where the home was, I think, deactivated or delisted in October last year. So some people were saying something like, check your facts, the house was never sold, but it was delisted, and then it was sold ultimately on March the 5th. Just on that point, I must say, I'm used to a certain true crime crowd. I don't know if it's a change in that sense. Dealing with the Chris Watts case, to some extent the John Benet Ramsey case, and perhaps Madeleine McCann. There have been some really, really nasty people in making some incredibly heartless and really nasty comments on my last video about Barry Morphew. People calling me a misogynist, I think, because I said something about Barry being with a younger woman or something, and it's in the article that I cited. So, people telling me I must do my research. Cheapers, guys, just keep an open mind, and if you think I've made a mistake, be nice about it. There's no need to be as nasty as you possibly can be. I am not as au fait with the Morphew case as with some other cases. That's not to say I don't know anything about it. The thing that makes this case difficult is we don't have access to discovery. Nobody does. So you've kind of got to go by the news coverage. You've also got to go by what you can see, what you see, for example, in his court appearance. So you've got to go by, to some extent, observation. Some of it's inference, and some of it is undoubtedly speculative, which is why I'm going to be doing a follow-up video giving you, and I know it's early, but that's the point, giving my theory, a couple of scenarios on what possibly happened. In other words, how Suzanne was killed. And I don't think it's too early to ponder that. We've kind of got to say, with no information, what is likely, what is possible, and then see where the information leads us. And you might say, how on earth can you even begin to do that? It's not, it is rocket science, but it's not something that's absolutely impossible. To some extent, you go to the identity of the perpetrator, alleged in this case, and you look at the kind of work that he does. In this case, it's very physical work, right? Similar to Chris Watts, similar to Patrick Frazee. In fact, I've actually noticed a lot of people that are, to some extent, suspects in cases are often people who deal with changing physical structures, whether it is the landscape, whether it is buildings, whether it is even John Ramsey, I think, did some remodeling of his home. I'm just saying, when you do that, you break something down and you're able to transform your environment. And I think there's something in that psychology that can sometimes lend itself to doing that to a person's life or to a particular lifestyle, where you can kind of remodel your lifestyle, where you dispose of something that was once part of your life, a room or something, and then you change it into something better, but you're doing away with what was there. And it's something that involves breaking the earth and breaking physical destruction of physical things. And murder's not so different to that. If you think of Chris Watts, you might think it's taking things a bit far, but if you think about fracking and, this process of breaking through the strata of the earth, right? And then the same thing of breaking bodies. He literally wanted to, I think, dissolve the bodies of his children. And all of that is to do with his knowledge of chemicals. You can even take it further with the Thrive, the whole chemical thing activating a person. So you use chemicals to deactivate certain people and other chemicals to activate other people. So it's just interesting to think about things in that way. And because he was a landscaper, you get a sense that he was a hands-on sort of person. And what does that tell you? But there are other aspects to consider as well, that he was a hunter, but we'll deal with that in a separate episode dealing with how Suzanne was likely killed. It's not a nice subject, but it's certainly in the ambit of this channel. So the other thing that I think was a shock, just in terms of the coverage that we saw, was, as I say, despite him having disposed of his home just a month or two ago, Barry apparently still can't afford a top legal defender from the private sector. Now, that's not to say it may be just that he used a public defender during the advisement, but he was asked if he wanted other counsel, and I just have my doubts whether he can afford a proper lawyer, because you'd imagine he'd have had one waiting in the wings all along. I mean, even Patrick Frazee had a lawyer. Ultimately, he was defended by, I think, 2 public defenders, but he, for a short time, had a top lawyer. And it's difficult to imagine someone who's been as defensive as Barry Morphew not wanting the same sort of thing. It does make you wonder, if you look at someone like Chad Daybell, where's the money coming from for his defense, right? And I think there's an answer to that, but you've then also got to wonder, where did the money go in terms of this? Is it going to the children? Was there a lot of debt related to Suzanne's cancer treatments? What is going on? It was also clear that the public defender, wearing a black face mask spattered with flowers, continued to attempt to shield his client from the cameras as they exited the courtroom. And you can see that in the 9 News coverage. Just interesting, the play that is going on, where probably Barry has said, please just don't let the cameras see me or whatever. And I think some of the reasons for this would be specifically so that if he's got a girlfriend or if his daughters are watching, and I'm sure that they would be, that they wouldn't see him in that state, right? I don't think he's so much worried that the world is going to see him as that there are specific people that he doesn't want to see, doesn't want him seen in prison garb. And that was actually brought up during the trial, I think, or during the advisement, where I think the public defender said something about that he wanted to appear on camera in a suit or something like that. They were just talking about how he would appear on camera and in what clothing. I thought that part was quite interesting. We had a brief glimpse of Barry's state of mind when the judge asked him if he understood what was going on regarding his rights to see his daughters, and Barry uttered a barely audible "yes, sir," followed by a barely audible "no, sir," when asked if he had any questions. Should we listen to that again?
Mr. Morphew, did you hear and understand those rights?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any questions about them?
No, sir.
And are you affirmatively requesting that I appoint the public defender's office at this point to represent you?
Yes, sir.
Personally, I was astonished that Barry, who's a big, brash, brawny fella, he seems very masculine, sounded so passive and so defeated. It seems as though this came as a pretty big shock to him. As another creator has already mentioned, Barry's seen as a flight risk, and this was stressed in court. Apparently, Barry has not only been disposing of property, but has acquired several new vehicles. In addition, there's been chatter from Barry about moving from Indiana to Arizona, and of course, from there it's just a hop, a skip, and a jump across the border to Mexico. It may be that this recent chatter from the new widower about moving to Arizona prompted Barry's arrest when it happened. All right, I'm not going to take things further than that. I will be doing a follow-up episode on Barry's mistress or mistresses. I'm just trying to get some more information. And then bear in mind on Sunday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I'll be taking you through a theory on the Watts case based on a patron on Patreon, Stephanie. I'll just be taking you through her theory. Quite a lot of people, obviously I've already posted that onto Patreon. Quite a lot of people found it very interesting, and so I'm going to share it with you guys on YouTube. That's on Sunday in a live stream. So I look forward to that. If you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please do like, share, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys next time.